So welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. My name is Nathan King, joined today by our publisher, Ronnie Sanders, and we have a special guest on the show today. Former Auburn Athletic Director Jay Jacobs has been kind enough to give us his time. We're going to talk some Auburn basketball and whatever else we end up getting into. So, Jay, thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you've been doing well.
I have been doing great, Nathan and Ronnie. Thank you both for having me. Looking forward to visiting with you guys.
Well, thanks for being with us. And we'll just jump right back. We'll just jump in. I mean, kind of fill us in on what your life is like these days since you retired, and then we're also interested in the midst of this unbelievable basketball season. How did Auburn get here? I mean, you were involved in the building of Neville Arena, and obviously you hired Bruce Pearl. So a lot of this success is due to you. So kind of walk us through that story if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all. Thank you guys again for having me. So we moved back to Auburn a year and a half ago. My wife and I did. 2 of our 3 daughters are in Birmingham. We've been in Florida for 5 years and just had a great time at the University of Florida and in Gainesville. But we're Auburn through and through, and so Auburn is home for us. Lived here over 30 years as a married couple, and I've been here quite some time, having gone to school here. But so right now, what I'm doing is I've got a couple of consulting groups going. We come in and we help athletics departments in areas that they just need some specialization sometimes, or maybe a little extra hand. Instead of having to hire somebody full time, they can hire us. We're called AD advisors. There are 4 of us, and we do a lot of different things: crisis communication, change management, team building, those type things. And also personally, I'm doing some executive coaching. I work with some C-suite people outside of athletics, and some people inside athletics. Just do some mentoring and some leadership, and be there for people to bounce their issues off with, and try to help them maybe be a little bit more productive and learn a little different way to do certain things. But we're blessed. And thanks. It's an unbelievable basketball season for Auburn, but it's an unbelievable, probably an unprecedented season so far for the SEC. In my lifetime, I don't recall guys having this many teams ranked in the Southeastern Conference like we do. It is a battle every Saturday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, like none other. But it's great to watch it. It's great to watch the teams be so successful, and it'll be fun to watch if everybody keep this up and get into the NCAA tournament. How many teams we get in there?
Growing up, I don't remember. I'm like you. I don't remember there ever being and of course there are more teams now, but it's the conference is so good now. It's I remember when Kentucky was good, and somebody else would be good once in a while, but it's pretty much Kentucky all the time.
Yeah, and then Ronnie, we bring Arkansas in, and it was basically, if you guys remember, the older crowd remember, we'd go to the Georgia Dome every other year to play our basketball tournament just to take care of the Kentucky and Arkansas crowds. Anyway, it's really changed, and those teams continue to be good, just like these other teams have caught up. And it really started back with Commissioner Slive. We were at the SEC tournament, and the ADs always met, and I guess they still do, always met on the Wednesday of the SEC tournament, the Wednesday morning. The tournament usually started in the afternoon, though it's changed now. And I'll never forget, it was on March the 12th. We were in that meeting, and Commissioner Slive brought someone in just to talk about men's basketball in the Southeastern Conference. And we looked at the data, and we were all really bad. We all had our own issues. We had our issues at Auburn. We weren't winning games, and he challenged us all. And those of you that had the pleasure of knowing Mike Slive, he spoke softly and carried a really, really big stick. He was so well respected and so smart, had so much wisdom. he just challenged us all that, you know what, we've got to do better. And like I mentioned, he showed us the data, how poorly we were performing. And I jokingly, I don't mean this in any embarrassing or unprofessional way, but I jokingly say, well, you know, Commissioner, you got on us so bad on Wednesday at the meeting Wednesday night, I fired our coach, which is exactly what I did. But it wasn't because of what the commissioner said. It's just because we weren't heading the right direction. We lost to South Carolina in that tournament that night, the first game, and we made a change that night right after the game. And Thursday morning, I called my dear late friend who passed away November a year ago, Mike Hamilton, who was the athletics director at the University of Tennessee. And I asked him, I said, hey, tell me about Bruce Pearl, because I didn't know Bruce, but we crossed paths because you guys know how it is in Destin. And, you know, teams coming into your arena, you meet, you know, you shake hands with people and people know each other from other schools. And we have a lot more respect for each other than maybe sometimes the fans do for each other. But probably need to change that at some point, but I don't think it will here in the South anytime soon. But so I'd met Bruce. So I called Mike and I said, hey, what do you think about Bruce? He said, he's an unbelievable basketball coach, Jay. Mike Hamilton did. He said, unbelievable basketball coach. He said, you know, I hated what happened here at University of Tennessee, but he left us no choice because he told an untruth to the NCAA investigator. Even though he recanted it, you know, within 24 hours, but it didn't matter at that time. It was just too big of an issue for anybody to walk away from and say it's okay. So I called Bruce, and that was on Thursday, March the 13th. I called him, and he was working at ESPN, and he said, I can meet with you Friday night in Connecticut. And so David Benedict, who was my deputy AD here at Auburn, who's now the athletics director at the University of Connecticut, UConn. By the way, he's hired a guy that's won 2 back-to-back national championships. So, you know, David was a college football player and just an outstanding administrator. He's done very well for UConn as an AD. We flew to New York Friday morning, and we may have gone in Thursday, and I don't really recall, but we were there Friday morning for an interview because we had gotten, you know, a few calls from agents about their guy was interested in the Auburn job, this guy or that guy. But we got a call that was a very popular head basketball coach's agent. And the agent told us that he wants to talk to y'all, he said. And I asked him, I said, so he's movable? Meaning, you know, he would take another job. And I know your audience knows this. I may be overstating some things, but he said, yeah, said he would come to Auburn. He said, he thinks it's a diamond in the rough. So we went up to New York, visited with him and his agent. And then we drove to Bristol and met with Bruce at 10 o'clock that night after he got off the air with ESPN. He'd been on the air a couple of days. And we started talking to him. I'll stop there, Nathan and Ronnie, see if there's anything y'all want to add or me to go back over.
Well, I was just going to ask, you know, what level of, you know, like consulting, I guess, that you mentioned that you reached out and you talked to Mike Hamilton at Tennessee, but I guess, you know, what were the other sort of movers in that decision? And I guess at what point did Bruce become the guy that you thought, okay, this is our target, this is our guy, let's see how we can get him in here?
Well, Nathan, what I did in this circumstance, I wouldn't do it every time, but I didn't have a consultant. I just did it on my own. We had a search committee help us with our last hire, and you know, it's always the athletics director's responsibility whether it turns out good or bad, and as it should be. That's where the buck stops. And so I just said, you know what, David Benedict and I are going to do this, and we're going to just go find our guy. So there wasn't anybody else involved at that point. Okay, as we talk about it, I'll tell you the involvement of a couple other people, but not at the beginning of the process. Once I got a chance to visit with Bruce. So I think I answered your question, Nathan. Did I answer both of them?
Oh, I was just wondering at what point in the process was it very early on when you decided, okay, Bruce is our number one guy, and then start to try to figure out how you wanted to get him there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you an interesting story that hasn't been told very much, and that's just because it hasn't been told. But so we visited with Bruce Friday night. All right, in that hotel. He came straight from ESPN over to our hotel, and we sat there and we talked maybe a couple of hours. And I don't want to understate this or overstate this, but basically it didn't go well. He was, generally when you interview people, they're sort of on the edge of their seats and, trying to sell you. There was no salesmanship whatsoever with Bruce. It was something that I'd never seen before. He was embarrassed by what had happened at Tennessee. He was profoundly personally impacted by what had happened at Tennessee. And as we visited, it became clear to me then, and even more so later on, that he hadn't forgiven himself. He hadn't, everybody else had seemed to have forgiven him. He felt like he embarrassed his family. Certainly his family had forgiven him and moved on. The University of Tennessee, college basketball, he was carrying all that. And he was having a real hard time Friday night visiting with us, thinking that we would even be interested in hiring him because of this weight that he was carrying around, that he thought everybody else would see it as well. Ronnie and Nathan, I didn't see it that way. When I talked to Mike Hamilton on Thursday morning, he reminded me that Bruce had a show cause, and he had about 6 months left on that, something like that, 4 or 6 months left on that. But that Friday night, he was just not prepared to talk about being a head basketball coach again. And so we ended the interview. Great visit, but obviously some issues there that had to be resolved. And later that night, or early Saturday morning, wee hours of the morning, what I mean by that is, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember if he called me or if I called him or exactly how we connected, but we agreed to have breakfast the next morning. Hey, guys, breakfast the next morning was the Bruce we know today. It was like, what has happened here? Well, I later found out what had happened, that his wife, Brandy, had talked to him and said, hey, look, pretend for a little while that you're going to keep doing what you're doing, and then pretend for a little while that you're going to be the head basketball coach at Auburn. How does those feel when you wear them? Well, he came in there Saturday morning, and Ronnie and Nathan, we got the talk that we thought we would get Friday night. Hey, if I come, you're going to get all of me, which all the guys say. But over the last 11 years, he's proven it to all of us. That's exactly who he is. But he told us this. He said, I'm not making any decisions until I get back to Knoxville on Monday night and visit with my family. Well, in the business that we were in at the time, 2 days is like years in doing a search. And the thing that Bruce didn't know, it wouldn't have made any difference to him, is that we've got this other high-profile coach wanting to come to Auburn. And so we flew back to Auburn on Saturday afternoon, and we continued to talk with this other coach's agent on Sunday. I talked to Bruce another time on Sunday, and I told David, I said, you know what? We're just going to go all in on Bruce. And if we can't get him, we'll figure it out. But I called Monday morning. I called the other coach's agent, and I said, I know this is going to probably shock you, but I haven't hired a coach, but there's a guy I want to hire. And I know that your guy has another job and he has to let them know something and he wants it. So I would tell him to take it. And they just said, well, what are you going to do if you don't hire your guy? I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, because he said, because my guy will be gone. I said, I understand. So I just felt like, we needed something completely different. And Bruce brought that completely different. And so we land somewhere, guys, in central to West Tennessee. And we come in there on that Auburn jet, and these two gentlemen there, it was one runway. And these two guys these two older gentlemen that worked at the FBO there, meet us and walk us to a rental car that they had helped us get. And they said, what are y'all doing in town? I said, brother, we fishing. He said, it look like y'all fishing for a pretty big fish. And I said, yes, sir, we are. And he said, well, good luck. Well, I'm saying good luck. And so we drove to Knoxville. It's about an hour or so. And we get to a gas station, and we had Bruce's address on our GPS. We were 1.7 miles from Bruce. So I called him and I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm sitting here with the family. We're having pizza and got a couple of friends over. We're just talking about this. He said, where are you? And I said, I'm 1.7 miles from you. He said, you got to be kidding me. I said, no. I said, you're my guy. I'm coming to get you. And he said, well, come on. So we went over to his house and had pizza just with him and his family, and another gentleman that was a real confidant of his helping him. And had pizza and a few cold pops. And about 2 hours later, we signed a contract. And that was on March the 17th. And then the next morning, March the 18th, that Tuesday, we brought him to Auburn. And, guys, when you do these things, you feel pretty good about who you're hiring. You don't know how the fans are going to feel about it. But when we landed at the airport and I saw all those students, I said, okay, this guy's got a chance to have some success, because the students were behind him. And then we go to the Coliseum, and it's like a pep rally. We have the stands with a lot of fans there. And so, okay, because, what you have to have, other than being a great coach, is you have to have support from the fan base. And he had that instantaneously. And now it's grown exponentially. But that's how it went down. There's some things in that story that, if you'd like me to talk about, I will, that were knife flipping off the edge points for me. But that's how that was the timeline of how everything went down. And matter of fact, March 18th was is Bruce's birthday, so it was pretty cool to fly into Auburn on his birthday.
What, obviously Bruce fits Auburn, and there've been some coaches at Auburn, certainly on the football side, in the past 3 years. I won't call any names that didn't fit Auburn. Bruce fits Auburn, and I've heard him say a number of times, I've coached a lot of places and I've liked everywhere I've coached, but Auburn's the best place I've ever been. What made you see that in him? What made you see that I know his personality is infectious, but he did have a show cause. What made you say, okay, this is my guy?
Ronnie, what really did it for me was how poorly Friday night went. And when I say poorly, from an interview standpoint, but it gave me such an insight into his character. I mean, when, we all, I'm a Christian and I believe in second chances. Peter had plenty of them, and I've had plenty of them. And when I saw the remorse and the, I hate to use this word, but the guilt that he was carrying, I knew, man, this guy fits the creed, because he believes in character and integrity and the things that matter to most people, or at least most people that run in my circle, or all people that run in my circle. So, and the other thing too is that, so the personality thing his character and integrity and his family, how he felt about his family, those were all just so strong. And I know that over the last several years, we've all seen that, but sitting there in that moment, I saw it. And then when you start looking at him, his career professionally, he's wondered where he's been. He's been successful in every one of his jobs. And that had those two things combined, had a lot to do with it. But more importantly to us, to me, was his character. And I knew his passion that he had because I'd seen it displayed. And so those things, Ronnie, some of the attributes and intangibles that just set him apart.
So hiring Bruce and that coming together with, obviously Auburn Arena was already built, or Neville Arena now. Talk about that. I mean, the Coliseum, the old Coliseum, is obviously a much different animal than what we have now. What led to that, and how did those two things come together to end up where we are now?
Sure, great leadership is how the Neville Arena came about. The Auburn Arena at the time is that our head basketball coach, our women's head basketball coach, Nell Fortner, and Jeff Lebo, our men's head basketball coach, we went to meet with Dr. Ed Richardson, the president, and two trustees, Mr. John Blackwell, who had played basketball at Auburn, and Mr. Bobby Lauder, who was an important member of the board of trustees. We went to meet with them about how we could build a practice facility attached to the current Memorial Coliseum. And we were looking at all different scenarios, and the decision was made that let's just think about starting over here. And so that's what we did. We said, let's try that. And everybody was unified behind it. And, the Coliseum, boy, it has been a great venue, a great facility for Auburn for many, many years. Some of us grew up going to concerts in there and doing different things, but the infrastructure was outdated. It was going to cost millions of dollars just to get the HVAC and the plumbing and the electrical, updated. And so we said, let's do something different. So we began to design the basketball arena. And actually, guys, we designed it at first to sit in the parking lot right across the street on Donahue, sit in the parking lot on Donahue of the Coliseum. It would have sat on the far east side of the Coliseum. And we designed those suites we have currently now in the basketball arena. Those suites were to open up to Tiger Walk. Well, then we started looking, and there is some drainage pipes and things underneath that parking lot, and plus we lose parking. But the drill field was up on that hill that we're talking where the arena is now, where Neville Arena is now. So can we work a deal where we can go up there and move it up there? We just took the same design, even with those suites with the outdoors. We took them up there, and we Yan Cowart, a former football player here at Auburn, we were in school at the same time. He was our architect, and they went everywhere. They went to Cameron Indoor to get the sight lines, to see how tight we could get our sight lines and still be in code. Now, if you rebuild Cameron now, the codes are different. So the rise over run is going to change. But now there's an old arena. It had old codes, so it was a lot steeper. So we got ours as tight as we possibly could to stay within code and made sure that everybody in that arena had a place to sit. And we decreased the size of the capacity. And boy, there were some people that didn't like that. There were some people that thought that it didn't make any sense for me to reduce the size of the arena. But I mean, we hadn't sold tickets, guys. Once in a while with Cliff, we didn't win the SEC, we could sell it out, but we hadn't sold out the Coliseum in quite some time. So, let's make a good business decision, but more importantly, let's make a better competitive decision. How can we make this place so competitive that if you've only got 4,000 or 5,000 people in here, that it won't feel that way? So that's what we did. And we also, in the Coliseum, we struggled every game because the faculty had seats right behind the students, and they were always complaining about the students standing up. I mean, we heard it. We thought about moving them, and boy, that was like you can't move the faculty. That was some people's opinion, but so we designed Neville so there was an offset, so the students could stand the entire time and not block anybody's view, which is all about the competitive advantage. So, and we came in about $11.6 million under budget at a time that everybody was concerned about gas prices. It just worked out beautifully. And now you go in there, and it doesn't matter what the event is: gymnastics, volleyball, women's basketball, men's basketball. They're great seats everywhere. It's just a great thing for Auburn, and several schools have come in and looked at what we were able to do here, and built an arena very similar to what we've done here. It was just a different way of thinking because of where our program was. You know, we needed to get people in there, and we needed it for it to feel cozy, but there wasn't a lot of people in there. We needed some kind of competitive advantage when the students were there, and all that just came together. And then you plug in the Bruce factor, and it just completely blows the whole thing up. So
when I was in school, I remember I was there when Cliff was there and the Cliff Dwellers. I probably still got a Cliff Dweller shirt in my closet somewhere. But you're right; those years were few and far between. And I remember going to some games that were sold out, but not very many.
Very many. Chris Porter, he would fill it up for us, and Cliff. But now we've got to the point where it's very consistent. That's what you want. We want it to be an everything school. We want it to be the best school for the best student athletes. In every sport, we want it to be able to compete, and that arena, helps all of our sports that compete in the arena. It helps them all lift their level of competition, which lifts their level of recruiting, which lifts the level of fan engagement, and all those things. So,
obviously Auburn's always had a high profile from a football standpoint, but from a basketball standpoint, I mean, it's all Auburn all the time on ESPN and national media, and that's a nice change for basketball too.
It's very nice, and you can't afford the university. You can't afford that type of advertising. I mean, Ronnie, you and Nathan, y'all in the advertising business. Could you imagine if Auburn were to say, how much would we have to pay to get this type of exposure? I mean, you couldn't afford it. And, what that does is I'm not looking at it just from an athletic standpoint. I'm looking at it from me being an Auburn alumni and, children, friends of mine's children want to come to Auburn because they're hearing more about Auburn, and the number of applications that we have of people wanting to come to Auburn because they hear about Auburn now, and they talk to people and they learn about this culture that's very unique to what we do here, and we have so many more applications than we do places for these freshmen to come in. It's just a wonderful thing for everybody involved. When you can raise the marketing and everybody really see what we're all about here. And athletics is just is one of the great ways to do it.
Jay, I wanted to ask you about, the football stadium now, obviously that north end zone. I know that was a scoreboard, that obviously you were there in that stadium with. It's near and dear to many people. It is no longer. I guess your thoughts on that and football making that upgrade. Of course, you were obviously spearheading the other side of it when you were here, and now they're gonna kind of round it out with another video board.
Yeah, that scoreboard in the north end zone is not near and dear to me at all. I tried to get rid of it in 2017 and met some resistance there, but finally here we are. Finally, somebody was able to persuade people to let's make that change. We couldn't have afforded to have done it at the time because when you build a new scoreboard, there's not a lot that you can't really. There's no revenue lift there. You can't sell any more sponsorships. It's already sold. You guys know that. It's already sold. It's already packaged. Well, you say, well, it's bigger and got more area. You do, but your sponsors still want their same percentage. So, it would have been great if we could have done it both at the same time, the North and the South. But that's why we waited, 5 years and trying to do the North. But what they are doing on the North End, or what they're looking to do on the North End, is exactly what we need to do. We need to create another video board down there so the students and the people in the South End have a better view, and everybody else in the stadium as well of the video board, but also create some premium seating. That's what everybody wants, in places people can hang out and socialize. I was talking with some friends over the weekend, talking about going to a Braves game. They hang out there, what's it called, the Battery? And they say they're sitting there hanging out. They realize, hey, hang on a minute, I haven't even watched a play yet. I haven't watched somebody bat. It's the social piece of it that you just have to keep trying to tap into, so you continue to create people wanting to be there. So what I know about the North End, they'll have a great plan for it. And it's a great place. It's our next place we should go to create upscale seating and try to get more fans at that level, but also take care of the people, that have been coming for years. That's what we always have done at Auburn. We've always rewarded loyalty. We've never kicked anybody out of their seats. They had to, sometimes the prices increase and they have to pay for that, but we've never kicked them out of their seats. If you're willing to pay, you can stay. No millionaire can come in and take out a guy that's been buying those seats for 40 years. And that's just the way we do business at Auburn. So,
you said something about we talked about exposure. I'll tell you a story. My wife's best friend, who she was roommates with at Florida. Actually, I'll tell you a story. They had a pact. They were never going to live in Alabama or Mississippi, and they were never going to marry anybody from Alabama or Mississippi. And so now my wife, when we got married, we were living in Mississippi at Southern Miss, and she married a guy from Alabama, and now she's living in Alabama. So she lost the bet all the way around. But anyway, her best friend was here a couple of weeks ago, and her oldest daughter was doing campus tours, and they wanted to come down and see. They wanted to tour Tuscaloosa, and I said, well, you're not coming down here and going there and not going to Auburn. So they saw Tuscaloosa one day, and then we took them to Auburn the next. And I guess the women had just played, and we walked in. The arena was open. We walked in, and they just, she was really impressed. And then it just happened that, usually the stadium's locked up, so we walked over to the stadium, but for whatever reason that day it was open. We walked down on the field, and I sent them a text after they left. I said, "What'd you think?" And they said, "Auburn all the way." I said, "Well, that's what I always thought too." So.
Yeah, all campuses are special, but there's just something about the culture of this place. We came up from a Baptist men's college, and we're a land grant institution. We're a hard-working people, come to school. We don't have any airs about us. We don't look down our nose at other people. We're just trying to do what's right every day, living by that Auburn creed, which is a great model, to live by. And so I'm glad. It's funny though, Ronnie, how people get a little preset that this is what they're not going to do. Sometimes you need to understand before being understood what you're saying you're not going to do. You need to understand exactly what that is. But yeah, sounds like your wife went all the way around, huh?
She did, and now she wears. She never wears any Florida stuff now. She's always got an Auburn sweatshirt on.
Yeah.
So I guess she's converted now.
Yeah, no doubt. He'll do it. It has a special effect on people. It really does.
She still doesn't. We'll be walking through an airport and L.A. or Philadelphia. She's from Philadelphia. We'll go up there wherever, and you get a War Eagle from across the airport. If you're wearing an Auburn hoodie or a hat, and she just still just. She's not that, I don't get it, but I'm good.
Yeah. It is. But as we mentioned, I think at the very beginning, we were at Florida for 5 years, and you can walk through airports and things like that, and you hear Go Gators all the time as well. It's just this place is unique, and Florida's unique, and they're all unique, but there's something special about the culture we have here, and how we I mean, we've got a Bible verse quoted in our creed, and so from Micah. So it's just a level of expectation that we've been able to hold on to. T. Boone Pickens said you can create a culture in 5 years and destroy one in 3 months. We've been able to hang on to a culture despite ourselves, and sometimes who we bring in, it may be completely different, but boy, we've been able to maintain that deep, rich culture that we have. So I'm glad I'm certainly glad that your wife is here and happy, and y'all are thriving with your 3 kids. It's a special place to. I mean, the school system here. And my oldest daughter taught here for a few years. It is just phenomenal. The school system, the public school system here, what they do to fund the elementary and junior high and high schools.
Talk a little bit about the football program. Things have changed and been a lot of changes since Coach died. But I think people fail to realize, outside of Brian Harsin, every coach. I mean, Dye won championships, conference championships. Terry went undefeated. Tuberville went undefeated, won a conference championship. Got shafted on the national championship. Chiswick wins the national championship. Gus plays for one, wins a conference championship. Everybody who's been at Auburn has won. But there have been high peaks and low valleys. Talk a little bit about why that is, and can Freeze capitalize on the current situation in the state, and how can Auburn go back to the 80s, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, the level of commitment, and I don't mean just finances, Ronnie. I mean just the level of commitment and the ability, because of the campus and because of the staff and professors, you can, Coach Dye made it clear and started a reputation of you can win championships at Auburn. Okay. Now I know that Coach Jordan won them, but in it's not really the modern area, but the fighting, the competing against the Floridas, Georgias, and Alabamas, Coach Dye showed that Auburn could do that year in and year out. Now we had a couple of down years occasionally with him, but Auburn will always support athletics if you are behaving like you should be. And so you'll always have a chance to win. You'll always have a chance to compete. There unique circumstances happen, and it's not unusual. It's around the country where different things happen. I mean, I had no idea the impact that, and some people won't remember this because it was, I guess it was 13 years ago, 2011, the summer of 2011, we had those shootings at that apartment complex. When we had a couple of former players get shot and got murdered, it really impacted our team. And we changed offensive and defensive coordinators, and it was really hard to overcome that in 2012, I'm sorry. It was the summer of 2012 when that happened. And, so there have been ebbs and flows, but a lot of that has to do with the competition as well. Is that just like in basketball right now, it's going to be hard for somebody to win every game because how good everybody else is. It's the same in football is that now our program for the last 40 years has always had a chance to be a contender. Now we've had some down years, as you pointed out, like all programs do, but the infrastructure is there to win championships. And when it comes to the current staff, I don't know enough about them. I just know that in my years at Florida is that you're gonna have to change your way of thinking. And Billy Napier is probably one of the best I've ever been around as far as all he thinks about is football every day. I've been around a bunch of these birds that think about a lot of different things. Okay. But he is just focused on football. Now, I know it hadn't gone as well as everyone would like, but he's running a real healthy program down there, and he'll have a chance. But what I'm getting to, Ronnie, is that, and Nathan, is that, everybody just will accept it. We're going to have to go to the transfer portal and get experienced players in order to win. I mean, We can try as we want to, like some schools have, just to do it with freshmen. That means you're going to be in it for the long haul, because it's just like in your business or my business. If I can hire somebody that's got 2 or 3 years experience versus somebody just coming into the workplace, if I am an ROI business, I'm going to hire somebody with more experience. And that's what we're doing. We're hiring players these days. We're paying players to play football. And at Auburn and all schools, if you want to win, you're just going to have to step up and pay them and get the best players you possibly can. And then you're going to be really good at coaching, at managing your rooms, because you get a couple of high-profile wide receivers or running backs or secondary guys. You're going to have to manage that room because they all can't start. So that's where the two come together, is that great players. And I think the best coaches do that. I saw firsthand Coach Dye do it with guys that could have been really reckless and a culture breaker on your team, but the way he coached them and loved them. And I've seen these other coaches that you just mentioned, do the same thing. That's the key to it, is having those guys that are difference makers, but you mold them into your culture. You don't change for their culture, or you don't change. You change their expectations. You don't change yours for them.
Well, Ronnie, unless you have anything else you'd like to add or touch on, I think we might try to round it out.
I've got one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. Jay, talk about 1989 and what it meant, and to the Auburn family. I know that some people, I'm old enough to remember it, and I still get chill bumps thinking about it. But I don't think that some of the younger generation of fans really understands what 1989 meant. If you don't mind, talk about that a little bit.
I don't mind. Ronnie, when you said talk about 1989, it registered what you're thinking. I started getting chill bumps. I mean, because I think, we're such a fleeting society. We think that, okay, this is the way it's always been. Really, how many people prior to 1989 even thought about the Auburn-Alabama game coming to Auburn? We played every year in Birmingham, and they can tell you it was 50-50. That's crap. It was never 50-50. There was always more Alabama fans in that stand because they played a lot of games there. So they had more tickets there than they weren't supposed to, but they did. It was just a fact. They did. And for that team to come in here, and for Coach Dye to get that game moved here on campus, it impacted everything on this campus. It impacted every athletic program. It impacted enrollment. It impacted our advancement office where they do fundraising. It impacted our admissions office. It impacted all of our sports. It impacted the entire state in the Southeast when he did that, when he was able to get that done. And it was just unbelievable feeling. We did that. See, some people may not remember this or recognize this, but Auburn was the first school to ever have a Tiger Walk. Now you've got a Vol Walk, you've got a Rebel Walk, you got all these. Auburn started that because for over 60 years, Auburn players would leave Sewell Hall and walk down Donahue, wide open all the way to the stadium. Okay, and I've got pictures of me and my teammates walking down through there, and there's nobody there. Your mom and daddy don't even show up, but you don't want them to. Don't come down here and say anything to me. I'm supposed to be zoned in. Coach, I'll take my head off. Well, then in '89, Coach Dye coined it Tiger Walk. On the night before, and Ronnie, you remember this, we had a big pep rally in the baseball stadium at Plainsman Park. I mean, people were just everywhere. It was electric like none other. Now, we played Tennessee and other schools, but it was different. And we go walking down that road. I was the conditioning coach, so I didn't walk with the team. I was the head of the team. But we came into the locker room, and James Joseph, one of our starting running backs, hyperventilated. They had to give him a sack. I mean, he's from Phoenix City, Alabama, a fierce competitor and a great player, and just all of that. It was just, you can't recreate that. There's no way in the world you can ever recreate that feeling. And that opening kickoff, Alexander Wright catches it, and it's hard to recognize, but there's one guy that got him, or else he flips into the field with that opening kickoff. Now, at that time, I guess we weren't as ecology or atmosphere is sensitive. We had our paper shakers, and the athletics department had given everybody in the stadium an orange and blue shaker, and there was like a haze over the whole field when that opening kickoff took, because those shakers were going off. And it was, I can't describe it. I can't tell you how that made me feel that day. I can't describe to you how that made other people feel that day. It is a feeling that you can only get and understand if you go through it. But it was I don't know of a single decision, Ronnie and Nathan, that Auburn has ever made that has been more impactful for more people and more entities than Coach Dye saying we're bringing that game to Auburn. I don't know of a single decision. There may be one. I don't know what it is. And going back to Bruce, I don't know of two people like Coach Dye and Coach Pearl that have completely changed the course of Auburn athletics like those two have, and of Auburn University. Bruce is the best ambassador that I've ever seen for whatever he believes in. And one of those things, he believes in Auburn, he loves it. He believes in Israel. He believes in his religion. He believes in his family. He believes in helping the underserved. Here's a guy that's graduated 42 basketball players, and nobody ever talks about that. 42 guys that probably wouldn't have had a chance to do anything else otherwise, and he graduated 42 guys. I mean, so those two people in my lifetime have changed, have lifted the reputation and the expectations of Auburn University like none other. I'm sure there were some before them guys that I didn't have the pleasure of knowing who they were or meeting them, but nobody's changed like those two. Would you agree?
100%. And that's one of the reasons I asked the question. I know what it meant to me. And I remember watching the game, and I remember those days. I mean, I remember I wasn't at the 89 game. I was at the 93 game. But the 89 game, I remember I was sitting in my dad's recliner when Alexander Wright caught that touchdown pass. I guess it was the third play of the first drive, something like that. And I still remember
it. Hey, Ronnie, I know we got to go. We had done something unusual. We had scripted our first 10 plays on offense. You remember Pat Sullivan, Larry Blakeney, they're all there. And the third play we thought was going to be a first down play. Okay, we thought we'd run 2 plays to get a first down. And the third play was 3rd and 6. And we called that takeoff to Ace, Alexander Wright. Coach Dow went ballistic. And I had the headsets on because I was doing substitutions. He comes running over there to me. Y'all can't call that. And the guys in the box could hear him, And Neil Calloway, who played at Alabama, who was my offensive line coach when I played, he was up there, and he'd been with Coach Dow for years. He said, Jay Bird, tell Coach Dow don't lose his guts. And I said, and he said, you're not going to say that, are you? I said, no, sir. And I just looked at Coach Dow, and I walked away. And then Ace catches that thing over his head. Coach Dow comes walking down there, and he said, well, that didn't turn out all bad, did it? And anyway, a lot of fun memories. Thank y'all so much for having me. Appreciate what y'all do to keep promoting college athletics. I just believe there's no place like it that can teach, time management and learning to get along with people that aren't like you, and critical thinking. You're running down that basketball court or that football field or that tennis match. You got to think about what you're doing, and just having respect for your competitors. There's nothing like college athletics. That's a whole level below the United States Armed Forces, any of that. But I mean, on a campus and what we do, just with regular people, there's nothing like intercollegiate athletics. And I appreciate what y'all are doing to continue to promote that and make sure everybody understands how important that is for young people to learn some values that way. And it's been a pleasure being with you guys. Hope we can do it again sometime.
We'd love to do it. Let's do it more often.
That's right, we'll do it. Yeah. God bless you all, and War Eagle.
Thank you, Jay.